Bolivia is in the home stretch ahead of presidential elections on October 20th. Riot police violently repressed protesters in Barcelona as they continue demonstrating against the jail sentences of Catalan independence leaders. And Russian troops now on the front lines between the two opposing armed forces in Syria. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo and this is From the South. We start in Bolivia, where President and candidate for re-election Evo Morales has said he has evidence of a coup being prepared in the event that he is re-elected on October 20th.
I have recordings of some of the so-called civic committees of Cochabamba and La Paz, along with some former military officers and members of the Santa Cruz Civic Committee. I have the recordings. They say they want to burn down the House of the People and intend to execute a coup if Evo wins. Once the election observers arrive from the Organization of American States, from Europe, we will be able to provide all the corresponding information to show how the right wing conspires against democracy, how the right wing conspires against the Bolivian people. That is why I'm explaining what happened in Potosí. It's the kind of paramilitarism seen in the previous era of the dictatorship.
Let's hear from our correspondent in La Paz, Freddy Morales, about these allegations and the upcoming election. Freddy.
Electoral campaigns are set to close on Wednesday as Bolivia's opposition is trying to unite their 8 candidates in order to force a runoff vote. They're doing so by calling on candidates to support whoever ends up in second place, so that their chances against President Evo Morales improve. Still, opinion polls give President Morales an advantage of more than 10 points. If Sunday's vote follows this trend, then Morales will be re-elected in the first round, as the law states that for a candidate to win, they must have 50% plus 1 of eligible votes, or be 10 or more points ahead of whoever is in second place. With the possibility of Morales winning in the first round, the opposition has been holding rallies known as cabildos, where they have agreed not to recognize Morales' possible re-election and embrace civil disobedience. For his part, President Morales has denounced plans for a coup attempt, citing these cabildos as part of the evidence. He also told a local news channel that he has proof of this conspiracy by social leaders and former members of the military, who allegedly discussed inciting violence if Morales were to win. Morales finally warned he will present this proof to international observers. For its part, the National Electoral Court said that the electoral process is moving on without any problems.
A judge in Ecuador has ordered that the prefect of Pichincha province, Paola Pavon, be held in preventive detention for at least 90 days. Pavon was arrested at dawn on Monday when the police raided her house and hauled her out of bed. The prefect is a prominent member of the Citizens Revolution Party, led by the former president, Rafael Correa. The judge also ordered that Pavon's bank accounts be frozen. 3 other members of the same party were also detained on Monday. President Lenín Moreno has repeatedly accused Rafael Correa and his supporters of being behind the huge anti-austerity protests of the last 2 weeks, but indigenous leaders have ridiculed the accusation. The Mexican embassy in Quito offered refuge on Monday to 6 Ecuadorian citizens and lawmakers aligned with the Citizens Revolution Party. A statement by the Foreign Ministry named the individuals as National Assembly members Luis Fernando Molina, Soledad Buendia and her spouse Carlos Viteri, and his spouse and trustee of the Pichincha Prefecture, Leonidas Aníbal Moreno Ordóñez. The 6 joined another prominent leader of the party, Gabriela Rivadeneira, who took refuge at the embassy on Saturday. This crackdown started on the same day that the president finally repealed Decree 883. The government published an executive order signed by President Lenín Moreno indicating that the law would cease to be effective at midnight on Monday. As such, prices for regular fuel and diesel have gone back down at all service stations. Decree 883 sparked massive popular protests across Ecuador for nearly 2 weeks as it removed state subsidies for regular fuel and diesel. And after Decree 883 ceased to be effective, fuel prices have dropped across Ecuador, bringing relief to most of the citizens.
Expenses went up, and apart from that, maintenance costs went up. Oils, all of this started going up. So for us, going back to the previous price is very satisfactory.
I would say that this should be increased gradually, because at some point the government has to end that subsidy, because truly, the country does need money to enter the fiscal coffers.
Following the repeal of Decree 883, President Moreno has replaced two top military chiefs. No reason was given for dismissing the head of the Joint High Command, Roque Moreira, and the commander of the Army's Ground Forces, Javier Pérez Rodríguez. However, the president thanked both for their services. After almost 2 weeks of massive protests, the people of Ecuador achieved a huge victory against the government's neoliberal measures. Let's take a closer look at the events that led to this historic moment.
On the 10th day of demonstrations, the situation flared up as repression from Lenín Moreno's government sharply increased. This day was marked by the image of a young protester collapsing after being hit by a projectile. Indigenous and popular movements, firm in the request that Moreno repeal Decree 883, announced their willingness to hold talks. The government, on the other side, ordered an immediate curfew and the militarization of Quito, with only 30 minutes notice for citizens.
I've ordered the Joint Command of the Armed Forces to immediately start the necessary measures and operations. We will re-establish order across Ecuador, and I've also ordered the armed forces to enforce a curfew in the capital city, Quito.
Parts of Quito were covered by large clouds of smoke stemming from the large quantities of tear gas used by the police and by fires started by protesters to conceal their numbers from helicopters. On Sunday, a possible end to the crisis was at the horizon. After a long wait, all TV stations went live to a dialogue table between indigenous leaders and the president.
Mr. President, it is clear that the right wing is controlling the country, along with the International Monetary Fund.
We do not want to affect the poorest citizens. We want these resources to reach their pockets. We hope to invest the money from the subsidies into large projects, but also medium-sized and small projects to develop the fields.
11 days of social pressure on the streets, added to the firm position shown by indigenous and popular movements, forced the government of Lenín Moreno to step back.
We want the Ecuadorian state to answer to the needs of our various peoples and nationalities. We speak of a plurinational state. We are a part of the state, but we are not consulted about these issues. It hurt us when we are shamed for being indigenous people and campesinos, when we are ignored for being poor. It saddens me that you have to talk about poverty when the indigenous people are the ones who plow the fields and feed the city. We have come with one goal, Mr. President. We ask for the repeal of Decree 883 because we are being affected, we are being attacked.
I'm really worried that the decisions we took are being seen as if they were designed to hurt the poor, to hurt the most vulnerable. That is why I want to reiterate that we hope that together we can analyze and reach conclusions for a new decree that replaces the previous one.
The announcement of a new decree had immediate reactions. A celebration for the people's victory couldn't wait. Although there is still a long road ahead, the result reflects the power of the people against the wishes of neoliberal institutions like the IMF.
There has been a second day of demonstrations and more police repression in Barcelona following the jail sentences handed out to 9 Catalan independence leaders. In the morning, demonstrators blocked Parallel Avenue in the center of the city. Some then marched to the Gran Via for another blockade, but the protest wasn't on the scale of those on Monday, which paralyzed much of Catalonia. The protest began after the Supreme Court in Madrid gave out sentences totaling 100 years. And as night fell, the protests in Barcelona grew to 40,000 people, according to the police. The riot squad again charged the demonstrators with batons as they tried to get past barriers around the Spanish government headquarters in the Catalan capital. At least 2 people were arrested. Protesters also faced violent police repression in the city of Girona.
We call for an end to repression, for the release of the political prisoners, for the exiles to be free to return home, for amnesty that should mark an end point for all of those who have suffered reprisals. Dialogue, voting and freedom are always the path to resolving conflicts. Threats, prison and punishment resolve nothing.
A group of Catalan independence supporters also protested outside the European Union offices in Brussels. They included the former Catalan regional president Carles Puigdemont. He sought refuge in Belgium after the independence referendum in 2017 when a Spanish court ordered his arrest. This week, a Spanish judge reissued a request for his arrest and extradition.
But we need the whole support of the European democrats. Because that crisis concerns European democracy and the quality of European democracy. It's not a Catalan, a regional or a Spanish issue. That concerns all of us.
From Barcelona, our correspondent Joan Ortiz has the latest on the Catalan protest.
The capital of Catalonia is somewhat calmer today. There are some protests in the city. At least one main street has been blocked, but it's not on the scale of Monday, when Barcelona was brought virtually to a halt. Nor have there been more protests at the airport. Across Catalonia, there have been some actions on highways and railways lines, but again, they don't compare with what happened at the airport on Monday. But the platform called Democratic Tsunami, which has shown its ability to use social media to bring out very large numbers of people, is saying there will be bigger protests later in the day. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. It was Democratic Tsunami which managed to paralyze the airport yesterday. 100 flights were cancelled, including 45 today. The police attacked the protesters over and over again. 115 people were injured in the airport, and there was also police violence in the city of Barcelona and in the other parts of Catalonia, which brought the total number injured to 131. One of those hurt in the airport suffered a serious injury and has apparently lost his eye. All this has been triggered, of course, by the very heavy jail sentences handed out to 9 of the pro-independence political prisoners. In all, the jail sentences add up to 100 years, 13 for Oriol Junquera, the former vice president of Catalonia, and 9 years for Jordi Sanchez and some of the others. And of course, the European arrest warrant was reactivated against the former Catalan regional president Carles Puigdemont, who has said he's happy to cooperate with the authorities in Belgium, where he's in exile, to resist the attempt to extradite him.
We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Jamaica's former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson has been hospitalized following a road accident near his Upper St. Andrew home on Monday night. Patterson is undergoing a complete medical evaluation at the University Hospital of the West Indies, although the extent of his injuries, if any, have not been revealed. A release from his office said that around 7:45 p.m., the former Prime Minister got into a crash which required him to be taken to the Tony Thwaite wing of the University Hospital. According to the statement, Patterson was conscious, alert, and with family and friends.
That if they are...
Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Brown says authorities have unearthed a scam to defraud the government between private companies looking to avoid paying import taxes and customs officers. He warned that those individuals will be prosecuted.
We have discovered that there has been literally a rampant looting of government's taxes.
By whom?
By brokers and others. And we have seen where some of those goods would have literally gotten in with exemptions, facilitated by forgeries. We have the information, and those individuals will be pursued. In fact, what may have happened to the individuals who imported those goods would have colluded with maybe custom officers as well as brokers to get those goods in. So there are going to be consequences for those individuals.
A Trinidad-born surgeon practicing in England is being hailed as a hero by many for successfully reconstructing the jaw of a teenage girl following a horse riding accident. Oral and maxillofacial surgeon Ricardo Mohamed Ali, who was also educated in Trinidad and Tobago, performed the meticulous reconstructive work on Emily Eccles when her jaw broke in half back in August. Eccles, who has since fully recovered, explained that her jaw was attached to her body only by a thread of skin and the helmet she was wearing at the time. Doctors described her injury as the worst they've seen outside of a war zone. Her surgeon, Mr. Mohamed Ali, was born in Trinidad and left for England after completing studies at the University of the West Indies. He has been living in the UK for the past 16 years. Moving on, at least 14 police officers were killed and 9 others wounded in an ambush by gunmen in the Mexican state of Michoacan on Monday. According to reports, the state police were executing a warrant on the city outskirts when gunmen in armored 4x4 trucks opened fire. The armed men also set 2 patrol cars on fire and left signs with threatening messages directed at the security forces at the scene. The government has condemned the attack and instituted an investigation. The Sudanese government and rebels have resumed peace talks. The peace talks, which are being mediated by the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, resumed in the South Sudanese capital, Juba. Delegates from Sudan's Transitional Sovereign Council and representatives from armed groups attended the meeting. Both parties expressed optimism for rebuilding Sudan through peace and reconciliation.
Concluding and reaching peace in Juba would be a huge boost and indeed encouragement to us as we ourselves in South Sudan head towards the deadline of establishing the revitalized government of national unity.
Today's meeting is also another important development that demonstrates the readiness of Sudanese parties for peace and reconciliation. With all parties committed to peace, the potential for the Sudan to shift its focus and energy towards building a strong economy that will pave the path for a prosperous nation is important.
Polls have opened in Mozambique in an election seen as a test for the recent peace deal between the ruling Frelimo party and the main opposition Renamo party. Frelimo is expected to maintain its grip on power, but Renamo is hoping to use electoral changes agreed in the peace pact to win control in central and northern provinces for the first time since the civil war ended in a truce in 1992. The presidential, parliamentary, and provincial preliminary results are expected on Wednesday. Meanwhile, as President Philippe Nyusi casted his ballot, he advocated for a peaceful voting exercise. In Uganda, a mass vaccination has started for more than 18 million children against measles, polio, and rubella. It follows recent measles and rubella outbreaks that spread to more than 60 districts in the country. According to the Health Ministry, the campaign provides an opportunity to intensify sensitization of communities on polio, measles, and rubella, as well as disease surveillance. The corruption trial against former South African President Jacob Zuma has been postponed to early next year. This after Zuma's lawyer told the High Court he intends to appeal last week's judgment, refusing him in a permanent stay of prosecution. Zuma is being charged on 12 counts of fraud, 4 counts of corruption, 1 count of racketeering, and 1 of money laundering. The charges relate to allegations that he took bribes amounting to $270 billion when he was deputy president of the African National Congress from a $3.4 billion 1989 arms purchase by 5 European firms. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Russia has stepped in to prevent further military confrontation between Ankara and Damascus as the war in Syria continues. Russia announced that its military units were patrolling between Turkish and Syrian forces near the northern Syrian town of Manbij. Russia, which is a key ally to the Syrian government, moved in to fill a security vacuum after U.S. troops withdrew from the area. The Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement that Moscow will not allow the current clash to escalate. Turkish forces attacked the Syrian village of Adisa al-Farat this Tuesday, sending several children to the hospital as a result of the shelling. According to reports, those civilians have died while 13 others were injured. Turkey has strengthened its military presence along the Syrian border as part of a cross-border operation against Kurdish militants. Ankara and its Syrian rebel allies launched a military offensive into Kurdish-held parts of the northeast on October 9th. And Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has defended his country's offensive in Syria, saying it was geared towards the elimination of terrorist groups. Speaking at the Turkic Council summit in Baku, Erdogan also said he plans to send back Syrian refugees currently in Turkey to their home country.
Operation Peace Spring has two goals. The first is to completely eliminate terrorist groups and PKK bases in northern Syria. The second goal is to safely return to their homeland, to their country, all the Syrian Arabs who have been our guests for 8 years. If God is willing, in a short time, we will establish security on the territory from Majiv to our border with Iraq. At the first stage, we will ensure, with their consent, the return of 1 million and then 2 million Syrian refugees to their homes.
The ruling party in Scotland is stepping up its campaign for another referendum on independence. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, told the annual conference of the Scottish National Party that they were winning the case for independence.
The process by which we choose Scotland's future must be capable of actually achieving independence. It must allow majority support to be expressed clearly and unambiguously. It must be legal, and it must have the recognition of the international community. Why? Because our job is not just to deliver a referendum. Conference, our job is to deliver independence. And my call is that the referendum must happen next year, and we are getting ready.
Police in France have used water cannon and tear gas to disperse protesting firemen in front of the National Assembly. The firemen across the country are demanding for increase in pay, protection of their pension benefits, and greater respect for their profession. They are also claiming that their profession is increasingly being relied on to fill gaps elsewhere in the public sector, such as aiding rescue efforts in road traffic accidents and medical emergencies. But they are also being called out for non-urgent health problems due to the lack of ambulances and doctors, especially in the countryside.
There is an impact on our service. Firefighters are worn out and lack motivation when we have to intervene in minor incidents, things which are not life-threatening. It also means our teams who should be assigned to emergencies are instead working as ambulances, which means there are delays when we are responding to real emergencies.
France has taken a step towards allowing lesbian and single women to conceive children through medical help. The lower house of the parliament approved a bill that will allow lesbian couples the right to use medically assisted reproduction methods such as in vitro fertilization, which previously was only allowed for heterosexual couples. Currently in France, lesbian and single women who want to have children have to travel abroad, which they say is discriminatory. After passing in the National Assembly, the bill now awaits upper house approval before it becomes law. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.